Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here, welcome back to the railway and welcome to another review. Today it's a very elegant pre-grouping tank engine. I've actually had today's loco for quite a few years, but the crazy thing is I've never reviewed it. I unboxed it in a live stream and did a very brief live review, but I've never done it justice in a proper review video. So today I'm going to fix that mistake. So the loco is this, the Hatton's SECR P-Class. It's an 060 tank engine. These models are quite unusual in that the retailer to which they are exclusive actually produced these by themselves. They went direct to China, they didn't use a known manufacturer. A lot of the time when you see an exclusive product to a retailer, that retailer will have commissioned a known manufacturer like Bachmann, Helgen, Dapple, you name it, to produce the models for them. And obviously that is a safer way to go because a known manufacturer knows what they're doing and they're going to produce something that works. But on the downside, that manufacturer will still want the same amount of money as usual, but the commissioner, the retailer, will also want a big cut, and so they add a lot to the price, and those exclusives end up costing an awful lot of money, and you're not necessarily getting a better product. In this case though, Hatton's went at it alone. They went straight to the factory and had these produced by themselves, which I think was quite a risk, but from what I remember, the risk did pay off, and these locos are awesome. They also came in at a very reasonable price, I think, because they went direct. So £99 was the original price, and I've had a quick look today and there only are a couple of these left in stock, a couple of versions, the ROD greens. But the good news is that they're even cheaper at £84. So I would say the risk really did pay off with these. Of course, the risk hasn't always paid off for Hatton's. You might have heard the Class 66 had a lot of quality problems. To be honest, we don't know how many Class 66s were affected, but what we can say is that the number of reports of faulty models and such damaged the public image of the model. But that is not this. This is the P-Class, and this was very good from what I remember. But I haven't looked at this for a long time, so we're going to rediscover this together today and hopefully really enjoy it. So here we go, the P-Class. Affiliate links down in the description if you're interested in getting one. Let's take a look. So, quite unassuming packaging on the P-Classes, no major artwork on the front or anything. They don't give away very much about the models from the outside of the box. If you look at the front, you can see we've got a line drawing of the P-Class, but that is not necessarily in the livery that's inside the box. On the end of the box, you can see there is a drawing in colour with the correct livery on it of the locomotive in the box, but it's very, very small. This one is H4-P-002. It is the SECR P-Class 060 tank engine, number 753, and it is in the SECR full-lined green with brass. And I'm not sure what the with brass thing means. I guess there are some brass-coloured parts on it. That's my best guess. But the packaging is good quality. This is a very solid box, and I think the sheer quality of the packaging that was used here really contributed to the high quality reputation of these locos, because you didn't hear very much about these arriving damaged, at least not very often. So let me show you what I mean. We've got not much to see on the rest of the box, so we'll get this out straight away. So yes, you've got the very stiff cardboard outer box, and then you've got the full foam insert cushioning the loco, and we'll carry on with that saga in just a moment because I want to look at this. So this is instructions for the care and use of this new locomotive. So it starts pretty strong by the looks of it. It tells you where to hold the loco by the tanks, which makes sense. Operating instructions, let's take a look inside. So digital analog shows you how to remove the body in order to fit a DCC decoder. There are some photos, colour photos here to show you better how to do that. These locos do have 5-pole motors inside them. Usually a loco of this size to date would have a coreless motor. These don't, and it was actually this loco that really turned me against coreless motors for a time, because at the time these performed miles better than anything I'd ever experienced with coreless motors, and maybe that will still be true, we'll have to see. So there's more information about how to fit speakers and sound and such. There is a section on detail parts, as you can see, so you've got the buffer beam detail, various vacuum pipes and such, cosmetic couplings, there's a section there, route indicator discs. So good instructions really, which shows you how to do all of this. Fitting a crew, there's a section on fitting crew, and actually I did get given some crew for this. Yeah, here they are. I don't know if these ever came to market or not in the end, but yeah, I was just like handed some of these once on a trip to Hatton's, and I never did take them out of the pack, so maybe that will be a project for one day. But anyway, that's a bit of a digression, isn't it? So, you've got the solid foam packaging, that comes apart. You've still got the typical clamshell packaging on the inside, so genuinely very well packaged. And of course, even that's not the end of the story, because then there is the sort of plastic wrap around the loco. So absolutely bulletproof. This could go through a war and probably not lose any parts. And there are some unique features in this loco. I remember some of them. Here's one of them for you. You actually get an additional set of buffers. I don't think I ever compared these buffers with the ones fitted to the loco. Surely they can't just be spares. But yeah, maybe they are, I don't know. I did once read a post or something with somebody claiming that to add sprung buffers to a loco increased the price by £15 or thereabouts. So if that is true, then an entire extra set of sprung buffers seems very, very generous. I don't believe that's true at all. I don't think they cost that much, at least not to the manufacturer. I have no doubt that for some manufacturers the cost to the customer might be £15, that could be feasible. Anyway, you've got the head code discs, as you can see. This loco does come with sort of moving screw-link couplings, which is a great quality feature. Looks like we have got some lamps, at least I think that's what that red thing is. Yeah, it looks like a lamp. So a great degree of extras. Let's get the loco out then, and I'm going to go looking at the buffers actually, because I want to understand what those extra buffers are about. I'll have to double check the instructions off camera actually and see. Anyway, here is the locomotive. And I think this was like the first or maybe the second SECR green loco I'd ever seen. And I remember the livery on this blew my mind. And actually it does look fantastic. Let's lift this out and I will show it to you, because they really did a grand job on these. Look at the livery on this. Now the finish is actually pretty good. It's not a very plasticky finish, particularly on the boiler and the tanks and such. There is a fair bit of satin sheen to that, which is great. Obviously the complexity of this loco in both the detail and the decoration is high, and yet this version was no more expensive than the much simpler plain liveries. And even though these locos, they weren't very good in real life, I think they were quite disappointing. In model form, this thing looks absolutely wonderful, doesn't it? Very much so. So I will show you some of the details on this loco in just a second, but for now, let's have some history on the somewhat disappointing class in real life. Okay. The Southeastern and Chatham P-Class was designed by Harry Wainwright, and it was introduced in 1909. These attractive little tank engines were actually an attempt to imitate the very successful LB and SCR Terrier locomotives, which, as you probably know, were extremely capable locomotives. However, the SECR tried to economise on certain aspects of the design, making them cheaper to produce than the Terriers, and this apparently was their downfall. The result was an underpowered design which produced less than 3/4 the tractive effort of the Terriers, and because of this, the P-Class that was originally intended for lightweight passenger trains, it ended up doing shunting and other lighter duties, which must have been quite demeaning for them, bless them. Also, only 8 examples were produced, in stark contrast with the Terriers, of which 50 were built. Nevertheless, the class did become part of the Southern Railway from 1923 onwards, with withdrawals not taking place until 1955. Now, despite their sort of disappointing lives, 4 examples have managed to survive into preservation, which means that half of the entire class still survives today. Now, how many pre-grouping classes of locomotive can claim that? I don't know, but to me it seems pretty crazy that this reasonably unsuccessful one can. So there it is then, up close and personal for you, the Hatton's P-Class in the SECR green livery, which I think is my favourite of the liveries. And I've got to say, this is awesome. I really do like this loco. It's such high quality, and in fact, the high quality of it is the most ironic part, because, like I say, in real life, the Terriers were far better than the P-Class. But in model form, in my opinion at least, and you might disagree and that's fine, the P-Class is much better than both of the Terriers on the market in 00 gauge. I mean, first of all, it's much heavier than the Hornby and the Dapol Terriers. This comes in at 123 grams, which is over 20 grams heavier than the Dapol one. And it does have the heavy die-cast metal running plate, which is a really good quality feature. I like that a lot. The build quality is really, really great as well. Fantastic quality models. I'm not aware of any details having dropped off this, except for some of the brake rigging. And the reason for that is that every year or so I do like to wipe off the old lubricant and clean the bearings and such and add fresh lubricant. That just keeps my models running the way I want them to. And to do that on this loco, you do have to remove the brake rigging in order to remove the base keeper plate and get access to the bearings. And some of the paint has come off those, but that is not how this model looked when I first got it. So let's start taking a look at some of the features of this model then. So clearly the decoration is absolutely excellent, except for the dome and the top of the chimney. As you can see, the top of the chimney is not real copper, it is just painted plastic. I think other locos do that better. And the dome, even though it is painted in a sort of metallic paint, this is not electroplated. And I think when Hornby and Dapol did SECR locos and they did electroplate the domes, they looked much better. Some people really don't like the way those electroplated domes look, so you might think that this looks better. I think objectively the electroplating looks more realistic, but again, it is just personal choice. The lining though and the other decoration is really quite wonderful. Look at the precision on the boiler. Very, very good and quite complex as well. They're not just single pinstripes or anything. There is a nasty bit of stray paint right there though, which is, oh, that's a bit of a quality blip, isn't it there? You do see that from time to time on locos and that is a pity. The side of the tanks have got the SECR lettering on as well as the SECR crest underneath. Incredibly well decorated. Look at the complexity around the side of the cab. I mean, this really is so much more complex than most other locos in the collection, really. So many different colours used. You've got the running number on the side of the cab. Is that a little builder's plate there behind that tap? It has just been applied over the top of the lining behind it though, which obviously is a little bit unrealistic, but this is only really noticeable when you look at it up close like this. Look at the wheels. These wheels are unbelievable, aren't they? Very, very strange as well. There's almost like a gradient between the red and the green, or at least that's the effect you get from all the way back here. Very good looking wheels as well. The axles are very subtle, can't see those too well. And the coupling rods as well as the crank pins are incredibly fine scale. They look very, very realistic, don't they? The buffers themselves are lined, as you can see, and the buffers are made of metal, painted, and are also sprung. Now, the extra buffers in the accessories bag are not identical to these buffers. The ones in the accessories bag are longer, they're a different buffer design, and they don't have the lining on them. So you've actually got a choice of buffer. I have never seen that before on a model. I've never been given the choice of which buffers to fit on a loco before. I do feel like maybe this buffer's a little bit wonky though. Does it look like it's facing down a little bit to you? Maybe a little bit. So there are one or two very minor quality hiccups here and there that I've spotted. Anyway, yeah, fantastic detail and decoration on the front buffer beam. The front of the smoke box looks fantastic as well because you've got the separately fitted smoke box dart which stands out. The lamp irons on the buffer beam are incredibly fine, as you can see, very, very fine pieces. Tiny little metallic looking parts on the side of the smoke box. They are plastic, of course. Valves on the side of the boiler with pipe work. Over on the other side, you've got a very good looking Westinghouse pump. Again, to me, that lining on it looks incredibly complex, which is very impressive given just how tiny it is. If I put my finger in shot, you can get a sense of the scale here. Underneath the boiler though, there is no representation of the valve gear, and you do have this sort of strange chassis coloured area, which does catch the eye a little bit. So yeah, tiny little bit of valve gear modelled down there would have been really, really good to see. Up on top of the boiler, you've got a safety valve arrangement here, which looks very complex again because there are several different colours used, and there's quite a bit of pipe work around the front of the cab, which all looks fantastic. And the front cab windows are very impressive to me as well, because not only is the glazing nice and flush and everything, but the window frames look metallic, don't they? They're quite clearly separately fitted, they're not just painted on, because I don't think they'd look that good. But to me, those do look like metal frames around the windows, and it really is a great effect, isn't it? Up on top, you've got a real metal whistle. That is not a plastic whistle, and in the finish, that shows through. I think the inside of the cab is a bit of a mixed bag. The back wall of the cab is spoilt a little bit because the gauges and such are all painted onto that glazing piece, and it does detract from the realism of the cab interior, I think. And this is even more distracting on the back windows. Yeah, I think that the fact of the matter is we've seen other manufacturers do a much better job of this. But the actual cab detailing itself looks fantastic. There are lots of separately painted parts, quite a few separately fitted ones as well. Great definition in the components such as the regulator and such. For the most part, I would say it's a really good looking cab. And then around the back of the cab, you've got this grille effect on the windows. It looks as though the frames are just painted this time, and as you can see, by comparison, not quite as effective. So those front windows are really quite something. I think you've got a very, very full coal load. I think this was removable, but I don't really like poking tiny coal loads like that to try and get them to come out. But it's reasonably realistic looking, so no big deal. Tiny little lamp irons on the back, loads more decoration as you can see. I mean, every part of this really tiny loco is just so incredibly well done. Look at the steps, look at all the lining on the steps. I think we've got 2 different colours, or 3 including the black, 4 including the, oh, it's just crazy, absolutely crazy level of detail. And all for £100 or even less if you want to get that ROD green one. Part of me expected, looking back at this loco a few years on, having seen so many fantastic new models from Hornby and Bachmann Dapple, part of me was expecting that the P-Class wouldn't be as great as I remembered. But it absolutely is. It absolutely is. It's not perfect in every area, but in terms of the quality and the overall level of detail, it really is something special and wonderful. One of my favourite models. Okay, let's get it down onto the track. We'll talk about the mechanism. I will show you the performance. And hopefully this aspect of the model is as good as I remember as well. There she is then, the beautiful Hatton's P-Class down onto the track, ready for her first proper performance test in a first proper review. So far then, I have showed you a very, very beautiful locomotive at an incredibly reasonable price, and it is usually around this point in the review where things go horribly downhill, and the best I can say about the performance is that it's adequate, but slightly disappointing given the price. Well, from what I remember of this loco, that is absolutely not the case with this. From what I remember, this locomotive is the gold standard in terms of performance. I'm just hoping that I have remembered correctly. First of all though, let's talk about the loco's mechanism, which is very impressive given its size. Pickups then, first of all, is fantastic. The front and back wheels have a pickup each going to them, as you can see, wiper pickups. The centre wheels though have 2 pickups going to them per wheel. That's an incredibly unusual feature, but presumably that has been done to improve continuity with the track, and I have to say that does seem to work, because unlike a lot of much more expensive 060 tank engines like this one does not do very much cutting out and stuttering, so that's great. Now, there's a slight user-friendliness problem here because the base keeper plate isn't that easy to remove. Now, I suspect that the brake rigging has been glued in place. In quite a few places it does look as though there is glue holding them on, and certainly the first time I tried to service this thing it was very difficult indeed, and yes, sometimes the pieces that hold the brake rigging would come off before the brake rigging itself. As you can see though, they're now coming off reasonably easily because I've loosened them in the past. This allows me to remove the base keeper plate, which is fully removable. It has spring-loaded contacts so that you can lift it up away for maintenance purposes. This reveals the proper turned metal bearings on the axles. These are not at all visible from the outside, so in order to lubricate these accurately, it is best to remove the base keeper plate. You've got a single driven axle, as you can see this is at the back end, and then the opposite axle, the front axle, has a little spring underneath it. I've never seen the point of this. I've got locos that have this springing feature and locos that don't. I can't tell any difference between those that do and don't. Body removal then isn't too bad, just 4 screws and it comes off very easily, so that aspect is very user-friendly. As you can see, the chassis is extremely neat and tidy. This is indeed a 5-pole motor, and it's quite a large chunky one actually, given the size of the loco, which is perhaps why the loco is such a good performer. In some ways though, the chassis is quite bare bones. I mean, there's no cover over the gear train, which is a bit of a shame, and of course there is no flywheel on the motor. Not a huge deal, of course, because there's not that much space inside the loco, and there's certainly no tender or anything for other things to go inside. But there is some space at the front of the motor here inside the boiler, so I guess they could have put a flywheel in, but they would have had to cut the bottom of the boiler in order to do that. And I do respect the fact that they didn't do that, because that would have reduced the realism slightly. Here is the DCC socket though. This is a 6-pin socket, and as you can see there is plenty of room for the DCC decoder to go just here, and it's quite easy to do because the socket just slots into a nice little housing from which you can remove it while you're fitting the decoder, so it's pretty good. The gauging is pretty good as well. It comes in at 14.3 to 14.4 back to back on each of the wheels, which is more or less bang on the standard. So overall, given the size of the loco, the mechanism is great. There is no frills or anything, no lights, no nothing like that, but it ticks all of the main boxes, and from a servicing point of view, it isn't too bad. Now, let me show you the performance. Let's give this a go. So does it work? Yes. And I think just from the way the loco took off then, you can get a real sense of what a good performer this loco is. So of course it has already been run in, although from what I remember, this loco ran absolutely perfectly straight out of the box. And it doesn't have a flywheel or anything, of course, and yet it's just, there is something incredibly smooth about the way this runs, isn't there? And I haven't even done the crawl yet, so if you're impressed now, just hang on a second. Right, here we go then for the crawl. I'm turning it up gradually. Still going. There we go. Like, seriously, can you believe it? It is moving. Doesn't look like it is, but it is moving. It's an absolutely wonderful performer, and I can go a bit faster. It's still super controllable. This is still slower than most locos. Bit more. Like, seriously, I think this is the best steam locomotive I've ever seen. I know people are going to say, oh, he's biased and all that, but here's the evidence, right? If I'm biased towards this locomotive, it's because it's pretty darn fantastic. And there's nothing wrong with that, folks. There's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, amazing. Really, really good. Look at that. Look how smooth it is. And the existence of models like this is an absolute godsend, because these give me reason, these allow me to be so critical of other manufacturers like Bachmann and such, when they release 200 quid, £200 or more locos that don't perform as good as this, or in fact don't perform anywhere close to this. So it's a great thing that models like this exist. Right, let's go over the express points and see whether the continuity is any better given those extra pickups. I don't know if it will be. But the loco did not stop. Alright, and that's an express point, by the way. Very unreasonable, I would say, to have a loco crawl over these. So there's a big insulated zone here. Yeah, the loco handles it perfectly. So, I mean, is it the third pickup that allows this to do this so well? Well, I don't know, because if those middle wheels just had a single pickup going to them, as long as that pickup was making good contact with the wheel, as long as the wheel is in contact with a conductive piece of track, then there would never be an interruption to power. But whatever the reason, this is crawling remarkably well over the dead zone, the massive dead zone of a Hornby Express point, without any problems. Performance is incredible. We're a few years on now, folks. I've had this loco for a long time. It's done quite a lot of running. The performance is just as good as it was on day one. That is something quite incredible. So Hattons, hats off to you. This is why I speak highly of Hattons, folks. This is why I'm happy to be associated with them. Fantastic model. Okay, so the pulling power was pretty good as well for a loco of this size. It's much more than the Terriers and such. Again, very ironic given the situation in real life. So 0.13 newtons, that is the tractive effort, which translates to around 11 coaches on straight and level track. So I've set up some LBSC coaches, so not SECR ones unfortunately, although hopefully when Hatton's Genesis coaches come to fruition, I will probably get some of those. But I did think, oh, 3 small four-wheelers, that's not really going to test this loco's performance. So I've also spoilt the train completely, I suppose, by adding a couple of Southern coaches into the mix. So sorry about that, but hopefully it will show that this loco's a decent hauler. Right, off it goes. All right. Oh, I'll tell you what, this Loco is a joy to drive. Look at the way I can accelerate it. Ooh. And this is on analog, folks. So don't ever presume to blame my controller when a Loco doesn't work properly. Because if it was the controller, none of them would work properly, and this one certainly does. Okay. Can it hold them? I think we've just proved it, but let's go again. Okay, yes. Very sensible speed as well, as you can see. And on the middle line, I've decided to go with a bit of a pre-grouping SECR theme today. So on the middle line, I've got my other Hatton's P-Class. This is also in an SECR livery, but it's in the SECR grey, which I think lends itself more towards freight than it does passenger. So I've hooked up a small goods train, and the SECR Green's performance is not just a fluke, because this one in the grey is every bit as good. I mean, it really is so incredibly smooth. And every P-Class I've seen is exactly the same. Just a wicked, wicked performer. And incidentally, if anyone's interested, you're probably not, this has the longer buffers, which were an optional extra on my green one. This one had them fitted from the factory, which is interesting. So there you go, off it goes. And then on the inside line, we have the Dapple D-Class, which is a very, very good looking Loco. In some areas, you would say it's a better looking Loco, I suppose, because of the electroplating. But this costs more than double by £2. And I have to say the quality, the performance, etc., of this D-Class was not as high as the P-Class. And it was twice the price. Unbelievable. There we go. 3 coaches, because that's all it can manage. Okay, folks, are you ready for the horrible slowdowns on the curves? What's that? No? Well, I wasn't ready either, because that is not something that these Locos do, happily. Perfectly constant. But you might say, oh, he's running that a bit fast. It wouldn't be so good at a slower speed. Hold my beer. Here we go. This is now at 40. Noticeably slower. Still pretty much constant around the curves. Now that is impressive. And still it goes up Gordon's Hill. If anything, it looks like it's picking up speed rather than losing it. Yeah. I mean, up until now I've never believed that Locos have superpowers, but this one, I think maybe it does. So the performance from this thing is wonderful. I really do think this is one of my best tank engines. And I really do think that given how much new models cost, there is no reason why they can't run as well as this. There's no reason why they shouldn't run as well as this. And I think if all new releases did run as well as this, I think I would be much less grumpy in a lot of my reviews. Which I do apologise for, but the fact of the matter is I think I'm right to be grumpy when expensive models don't run well. And this Loco is a fantastic example of a Loco that didn't cost that much, running extremely well indeed. And so it's an example that I should be using more often, frankly, isn't it? I've sort of forgotten how good they were. And of course, if you take the performance and add the extreme level of detail and the beautiful decoration, you end up with something really, really wonderful. And that's why I like these so much. They're just the full package. Let's have some ratings then for the beautiful Hatton's P-Class in the SECR Green. And here are the ratings, and as you can see, it's looking pretty good. The level of detail I've given 4-star. Now, many areas of the model are easily deserving of a 5-star. You've got fantastic decoration, loads of lovely detailing. However, there are 1 or 2 issues which do have to bring it down for me. I mean, the interior of the cab, as I say, the glazing and the windows do sort of detract a bit from that. You've got no valve gear between the frames, and some of the parts, such as the top of the chimney and the main dome of the Loco, they're not made of metal or electroplated plastic, so they don't look as realistic as they do on other Locos. I know it's harsh to knock off a whole star for that, but just because I really like a model doesn't mean I can be extra generous to it without good reason. Performance though, I don't think it is too generous to give 5-star. Absolutely incredible performance. The crawl, even after all of these years of running on my layout, is still absolutely faultless. So smooth, all speeds are the same, no slowing down. fantastic even with a load, really, really great performance. It's still the gold standard for performance in my opinion. Pulling power, okay, 0.13 newtons, that is fantastic. That is more than the Hornby or the Dapol Terrier, and it's even more than the Hornby Peckets, even though the Peckets are heavier and are largely made of metal. Pulling power, very, very good for a loco of this size. The mechanism then I've given 4-star. Again, maybe this is a little bit harsh because it does have a lot of great features, this mechanism. It's got the 5-pole motor, proper bearings on the wheel set, removable base keeper plate, extra pickups. I mean, you don't often see that, but one axle does have 2 sets of pickups per wheel. However, 1 or 2 things let it down. It's not that user-friendly to access for maintenance purposes. I don't think that brake rigging should have been glued into place, for instance. And of course, even though it's a very high quality motor, it doesn't have a flywheel. I always tend to reduce the score a little bit when there's a missing flywheel. Not too bad in this case. And there could be a slight improvement to the quality, such as a cover over the gear train and such. That would have made it a bit better, but these are not major things. So I've only knocked it down off 1 star for all of that. Quality then, again, very, very high quality, well built, very little visible glue on this one. Not really aware of any parts dropping off these, and I've had quite a lot of experience of these models now. Die-cast running plate, plenty of weight to these, so that's all okay. There were just 1 or 2 slightly crooked details. I reckon some of those, well, at least one of the buffers anyway, was pointing slightly down, and some of the paint had gone askew on the boiler, and 1 or 2 of the printed details were showing through behind other printed details. So again, all very minor things. These are not big deals, but I've got to be reasonable here and take a bit off the score for these things because I've got to be consistent. Value for money then. Now, take this with a pinch of salt because these models have been around a while, and maybe if they were going to be produced again today, they would be more expensive than this. However, you can still buy one of these locos brand new for £84, with the full price being £99. Now, I mean, these days that is a really, really good price. Very, very solid price for these, and that gives us an overall score of 8.93 out of 10. Beautiful locos, absolutely stunning. They may not be perfect in every area, but the very reasonable price makes that a lot easier to swallow, and that makes these a much better purchase than a lot of other locos of this size on the market. If only Hattons would produce another run of these, or something else similar. This hobby really needs high quality models like this. Let's pop that into the logbook then, and yes, I think as deserved, this is in top place. Just beating the D11 there. Yeah, I mean, I think that's reasonable, I really do. Wonderful models, now they're a few years old and they still hold up. Very, very impressive. Well folks, I hope you enjoyed that video. I actually really did enjoy it. It's been long enough now that I'd forgotten just how good these locos were, and it's been a real pleasure to just learn all over again what a good job Hattons did on these. So yeah, it's wonderful. It gives us hope for this hobby, doesn't it? It shows what can be done, and it shows what some manufacturers are actually capable of for not a ridiculous amount of money. So it's great to see models like this come along. It does me a big boost. You know, it makes me feel better about some of the models I've criticised in the past anyway. So that was that. Do comment down below, let me know what your thoughts on this lovely loco are. Let me know, was I right? Do you think the scores were reasonable? Was I wrong? Was I too generous? Did I let the amazing performance and good looks skew my ratings? That's possible, you know, I'm human like everybody else, I think. So do let me know what your thoughts are, but thank you for watching, and I will see you soon. Alright, cheers everybody.